While technology has enabled many distributors to shift their sales structure to one that relies predominantly on inside sales, outside sales certainly isn't dead. Yes, a growing portion of today's B2B buyers now prefer a buying experience that doesn't involve an actual sales rep visiting them, but there remains a large contingent of buyers who appreciate interacting with an actual human. Especially for small and mid-sized distributors, their outside sales force remains a differentiator between them and national competitors who might rely almost entirely on inside reps and customer service centers. First Ayd, a 50-year-old family-owned mid-sized MRO and JanSan supplies distributor in the Chicagoland area, continues to find success with its field sales model, which emphasizes entrepreneurship and freedom for its sales force. I'm Mike Hockett, MDM's executive editor. This episode of the MDM podcast features a conversation with First Ayd's 32-year-old president, Tommy Schreiner, who has been with the company since high school. Under his father and company founder, Tom Schreiner, he worked his way up through the business and built his own book of business before taking over company leadership. Besides his role as president, where he oversees the company's sales and marketing operations, Schreiner also serves as a buyer, sales manager, and a sales rep for the company, giving him unique perspective that covers management and frontline selling. We discussed First Ayd's sales model that centers around giving its 120-plus sales reps the tools and freedom to pursue the earnings potential that they want. This includes an emphasis on flexibility for those reps while catering to their competitive nature. And with MDM's Shift Conference less than 2 weeks away on September 11th through the 13th in Denver, you can still get 10% off of your registration by using the code MDM Podcast. We'd love to see you there. Enjoy the episode. Tommy, thanks for joining the MDM Podcast.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
I think the best place to start is always with an introduction. So can you take me through your background as well as an overview of what First Ayd looks like today, which you've really been tied to ever since high school?
Yeah, so I'm 32 now, and it's 2024. So I started here, back in high school, so 2008 when I was 16. And, my dad started this business out of his car, selling, this blue hand soap, which was innovative in 74. And for him, it was just, his late 20s, a summer job. Well, he was with another company, and this company was a fuel and oil additive company, and they were growing very fast, but then they had some mismanagement problems and they went bankrupt. And he was left alone with this new product he was trying to introduce with them, and it was this industrial blue pumice hand cleaner. So I guess that's kind of the story. Everybody my dad sampled it to would end up buying it. Yeah, so I got involved because I was 16. I saw the success of my dad. I saw the growth of the business over time. It was very difficult for my dad. 74 to about 1980. 5 years as just my dad and a guy he met at a gas station named Jim Evans, and he had his age Jim. It's an easy way to make money. Everybody that tries blue soap likes it. Back then, if you were a mechanic or a painter, you get paint on your hands, and it was very difficult to take off. And there wasn't really a good innovative hand cleaner. So they innovated this pumice hand cleaner called blue pumice soap. So everybody tried it, bought it. It was easy to make money. But then customers would ask about other things. Hey, do you have paper towels? Do you have trash bags? Do you have brooms? I need other things in my shop besides this blue soap. So then they're like, well, maybe we should stock more than just some blue soap. And, they ended up stocking some brooms and some squeegees and some glass cleaner. And gradually it grew, but there was a lot of trouble, challenges because you didn't have economy of scale on the aerosols or the ingredients for making the blue soap. And they hired about 100 salespeople over 6 years and starting, and nobody stuck around. It was just my dad and Jim after 6 years of hiring all the salespeople. They would last a couple months or maybe a year, and then they would, I need a real job. I need to work Procter & Gamble or Fastenal. Fastenal wasn't so big at the time, but the big company at the time maybe was Grainger. So they modeled themselves off a Zepp commercial, and Zepp was, the leader in the industry in the 80s, 90s. They were a specialty chemical powerhouse. So we adopted a lot of the tactics they had, a lot of the rules they had, and product line they had to further accelerate our success. And I didn't get involved till, again, 2008. I was in high school. I was like, okay, I just need a summer job. I was labeling brooms. I was packaging soap bottles in our production room. We also manufacture here beyond Distribute. We have our building now, which is 100,000 square feet. We occupy half the building, 50,000 square feet, 33-foot high ceilings. and we rent out the other half of the building. And that gives us flexibility with expansion. So like the pandemic, for instance, we were occupying 34,000 square feet. We would break down the wall to expand. Our head count, it's about 170 people today. Got about 125 salespeople across the country. In rep coverage, Philadelphia in the east, UP Michigan in the north. We have somebody in Denver, west in Colorado, and then South Texas. But primarily, the 80% of sales are within 500 miles of Chicagoland. And when you say 125 salespeople, doesn't mean everybody is, 40 plus hours a week. We're very tolerant to the sales force. If they're here for 10, 15, 20 years and they're maybe in semi-retirement mode, we'll let them, work whatever it may be, 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week. Even if they're only selling 5,000 a month, we'll tolerate them and let them stay on, because we know that their customers are probably now friends of theirs. It's their cousin, it's their uncle. And that's a key insight, is to be tolerant of your salespeople as they get older, because they have personal relationships with a lot of customers, and you can alienate those customers by changing their territory, getting rid of them.
So with that founding, can you walk me through any other of First Aid's milestones in its now 50-year history, just how it got to where it is today?
First is the owners being still involved in selling. So like, some owners may think they need to be involved in management, maybe office more often. But even today, our owners, including myself, my dad, and Jim, are still selling day to day, stay in touch with the customer. So a milestone was continuing to be very involved day to day with seeing customers and cold calling, so you can sympathize with the sales force, how difficult it is, and really help train them with sales meetings. So one milestone is maybe sales meetings. How do we train these people? What do we do when they're just interested in the job and we don't want to invest too many resources training them? So we have online training where it used to be DVDs. We'd mail them DVDs in the 80s, 90s, and they would take these 6 videos. They do a 10-question quiz per video. But it was quite time-consuming and expensive to grade the courses. And then just recently, like 2013, 14, when I was out of college, I got us onto online training. So you have, you just record your sales meetings. We have a sales meeting every 3 months, and it's only 3 hours, 9:30 in the morning till 12:30 noon. And we have a person record it, and we then have somebody make up a quiz on that video. So maybe they're covering mop heads, or they're covering degreasers, or they're covering lubricants, or they're covering how to sell food processors or car dealerships. And now you have that recorded sales topic for many years. But now you have the person that's interested in the job watch the video, do the quizzes before you meet with them to indicate that they're serious and they're committed. Now they have some background information on your business. So that really helped cut down on our onboarding time, because it was a lot of work to interview and train in person. People would never end up taking the job, and you'd waste a lot of time, in those intermediary steps. So doing that, the training online, in person right along, and then getting them set up to start has really helped, increase our pipeline of talent coming in. We can just hire more people.
And you mentioned how you're the company president, but where you oversee the sales and marketing efforts of First Aid, but you're also an active buyer, the sales manager, and a sales rep for the company. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of hats to wear. Mm-hmm. What is it like for you to be leading the overall sales direction for the company while also, like you said, being in the trenches and doing the day-to-day selling? And I'll also add in that you're probably the youngest company president that I've interviewed for one of these things. And I am the first executive that's probably younger than I am. So it's just an interesting dynamic of how seeing someone that's still a younger millennial leading an industrial distributor and sales company. What is it like for you to be leading that sales effort while also being involved with the day-to-day selling?
It's a very good question. And, first and foremost, when I started 2010 out of high school, I just worked the summers for 4 years. And then I was full-time 2014 out of ISU, Illinois State University, out of college. And I had to prove my mettle. People didn't necessarily respect me or trust me. There were people here that were 20 years or 30 years. Our buyer, our general manager, does a great job. And a lot of other salespeople, they're like, well, what does he know? So I really had to work hard. I was working 10, 12-hour days throughout my summer, cold calling from scratch, knocking on business doors with flyers and samples. So first and foremost, I had to prove myself, that I'm, worthy of, being in any sort of management role, and I know what I'm talking about. So I was really insecure, and I had to work very hard. I would remember 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. I remember being at auto shops as their doors were closing, and I was taping flyers on their door and with my business card, please call me, I'll give you a great deal. And I I remember, it was just a lot of rejection. People didn't trust a young 20-year-old, 19-year-old trying to sell them thousands of dollars of commercial supplies, a floor machine or drums of degreaser or their weekly order of pallets of trash bags and liners and paper towels. So it's very difficult as a young person getting started in this industry. You'll see the median age is much higher than like a tech industry is. Tech industry, I'm probably the average age, or maybe I'm a little old if I was selling software, by phone. But in the janitorial industrial distribution space, maybe it's 50 to 60 is the average age range for people in management. But yeah, so I worked very hard in sales, and then like my dad's like, okay, he's constantly throwing new work tasks at me. Like now try recruiting and interviewing people. Now I'll try helping with, me at a trade show, getting better prices or better quality products. Because it's all interrelated, of course, as you grow up and as you get into it, higher in a business. And my old man, he's 78 now. He's got Parkinson's. He was diagnosed when he was 69, about 9 years ago. So that was also a strong impetus for me to, put in extra hours to learn the business so that I could help keep this going. We have 170 employees. We've got thousands of customers. We do about 1 in 3 rental cars in the nation for their car cleanup supplies, one of our big customers. About half or a third of the airports in the Midwest, we do the cleanup supplies for, like the cleaning supplies for the contractors are buying from us to clean the airports. So we're kind of under the radar, the supplies that we're distributing, but it's very important that there's strong leadership so that customers are taken care of, employees have livelihoods secure. So again, like wearing all these different hats, it was a matter of learning the business, it's production and buying, and well bought is half sold. So if I'm involved in I know first foremost if our price is too high. I tell you an example, earplugs, for instance, we were buying from a wholesaler. We were buying, $20,000 a month of these earplugs. It's $250,000 a year. And we didn't realize, but over 10 years, we've sold a lot more earplugs. We sell 2,000 a month. Now we're selling 20,000 a month. We got some big customers, some large manufacturers. And I was like, well, we're still paying quite a high price, even though we're selling so much. And because we haven't really explored like a supplier in Asia. So as your company grows, you need to keep looking at where you're sourcing and try to find, okay, so where can we better source this product? And PPE particularly, Asia is generally the best place to source because they got lower labor rates. But with chemicals, you typically want to source from the US because it's going to be difficulty of importing chemicals. So typically you want to have a local blender, make those up for you. So as time goes along, you learn all this. And I guess the original question was, what's it like doing all these jobs and also being president? I'm kind of, I don't like to be president. I'd rather be just a salesperson because it's less to worry about. But I'm president because, there's a lack of my dad and his partner, they're aging out in their late 70s. And somebody needs to keep this going. I'm in a sense most qualified because I've spent since I was 16 here and I've done a lot of jobs. And I still think it's important for me to sell day to day. And even companies like, Fastenal or Uline or Grainger, the big guys, for their executives to get out once a week and talk to the customers, even talk to people that aren't buying from them. Like, why aren't you buying from us? And figure out, that's what the reality is. That's the real boss at the end of the day. People writing you the checks that don't bounce. So it's important for the owners of companies to realize they aren't the boss, it's the customer, and to talk to them as often as they can. And that's my 2 cents.
So from what I've researched about the company, it looks like what you and the team there really try to maintain and communicate to your sales force is freedom. And by that, I mean the autonomy for first aid sales pros to go out and do their thing and reap the benefits from it without a level of corporate oversight that can be commonly found at a lot of other larger distributors and manufacturers. Can you take me through what that sales model looks like in essence?
Yeah, it's a good question. So our sales force is W-2 with healthcare benefits, 401k, but they have, unlimited vacation time. And it's really, we're just looking at the numbers on a monthly basis. So what are your sales? What's your gross profit generated? And we think we're the most generous with our comp plan in the industry. We pay out about 70-80% of gross profit. This industry, 40% gross profit is typical. It ranges from 30 to 50%, depending on your product mix. So you'll see Fastenal at the higher end at 48, 47% because they do a lot of fasteners where it's quite labor intensive to pick orders for fasteners. You'll have hundreds of SKUs and that takes quite a bit of time to pick and to manage when you're doing vendor managed inventory. And then companies like safety distributors will have lower gross margins, like maybe 25, 30% or lower, because it's big stuff that's easy. It's a pallet at a time you're taking on a forklift, putting on a truck and shipping out. But the average being 40% in the industry, and we're about 40%. So in terms of the comp plan, we split the gross profit with the sales force. So they get 50%, we get 50%, but we also have various other incentives. We'll pay them $20 per business card. So we're stopping a new place of business. So you get 10 places, you get 10 times $2,200. 20 places, 20 times $2,400. But we monitor that to make sure that they're actually opening new accounts for the places they stop at. Yeah, we have quite a few salespeople, and that's a sales force led model where we're going out there to the market with our salespeople with a catalog and samples. And we're really heavy on sampling. So we have a lot of private label products, over 300 private label items, like glass cleaner, stainless steel polish, hand soap, bowl cleaner. And we encourage them to hand a lot of this out. I would say 10 to 15 different items on a typical stop to a promising prospect, maybe a molding company with 400 employees. We get $10 in sample credit in addition to that $20 per card. So that's our marketing / sales team, is the salespeople. In terms of the freedom, yeah, I mean, they have enormous freedom because it's mostly commission driven, but it's also, they get paid even without selling because they get paid per cards. But if you look at the top salespeople, it's mostly commission, obviously income, and income average. And what's the range for our sales force? It's about $105,000 a year in income average. And the top 5-10 people are earning between, $250,000 and $500,000 a year in income. If you can believe it. They get some big customers and they do quite well. I listen to other people on this podcast. I don't see them disclosing kind of the numbers. Like, what are your salespeople making? That's the main incentive for salespeople. They're competitive. They want to win. And to help them with that incentive mindset, every day we email a scorecard or leaderboard showing where everybody's ranked, 1 through 125, and where they're located, when they started. And people are looking at that daily. If you follow sports, you're looking at, okay, well, LeBron James or Stephen Curry, who's shot more 3-pointers? And how everybody's really into the rankings on sports and the statistics, and you should try to gamify more your business if you can. And whatever you can measure, it can be improved. So the better you can measure things, the better you can be transparent and communicate all the numbers of people's contributions, the more work people will put in, because they want to be as good or better than their peers. So that's just some tactics to in terms of the income of our sales force. I did mention it was $105,000 for average, and the big numbers for the top guys. We do have people below that, of course, $50,000 a year, $30,000 a year. They may only be working 3 days a week, 1 day a week. So, but freedom we always advocate, because that's why people often get in the sales profession. They want to earn what's proportionate to their effort, and they want to be able to run a business like how they want to. And that's we give people empowerment to bring products in stock. We split the cost with them. So if they want to bring in, let's say this pen here, not a pen, let's say a degreaser. We have a purple degreaser. They want a blue degreaser. Their customer prefers the color blue for some reason. We'll let them bring it in and say it's at $2 a gallon. They want to bring in 10 gallons. We'll pay $10. They pay $10. We'll split the cost. And if we get 3 other reps to sell it on a regular basis, they get their money back. It becomes a public item. So this is one thing we call a salesman sponsored program. It's a source of innovation for bringing new products, because I don't know what in Michigan is popular or what in Ohio is becoming popular. So we decentralize the purchasing in a sense by authorizing all the salespeople to bring products in stock. But they have to put some skin in the game to do so. And then if it becomes successful, if 3 other customers are buying on a regular basis and aren't their customers, we consider that successful. Now it becomes a public item in the catalog and the website. So 80% of items come in through this sponsor program. And we just, we see a lot of successful businesses that you've interviewed, Mike, and, a lot of them are entrepreneurial in many ways. And that's kind of a direction that we advocate.
With that sales model where it's freedom-based selling, and where you allow salespeople to kind of be as competitive as they want to be, does that ever present challenges when it comes to just maintaining consistent pricing, or sales reps competing with each other for the same customers? Is there any friction in there on the internal side?
Yes, that's a good question. And, there's 2 directions, right? So when you're not that big, you're a startup company, you're going to have no brand recognition or minimal brand recognition. That's your problem. And you're going to have very difficulty with, economy of scale and the broad product line that these bigger guys will have. But as a bigger distributor, now you're going to, as you get very big, you're going to have the problem of, well, we already sell most customers in the area. And if we have a sales team, they're competing for the same customer. Maybe John called on this molding shop Monday and Amy calls on it Thursday, and now the customer's confused if they have overlapping territories. So we're in that sweet spot where we're mid-size. So we have some problems with brand recognition. If we're in a new area, like let's say Kentucky, where we don't have a lot of rep coverage. But if we're in Chicagoland, where we're historically from the 70s, there is a lot more of that problem of, okay, well, we had Angel start Monday and Luke started Thursday, and now they're in the same town this week calling on prospects. We model ourselves off Zep with their 12-month account protections list. So you get what we call a city list for any of the towns you want to work. So if you're in Naperville, Illinois, you get a city list for that town. Or if you're in Chicagoland, you get a city list for Chicagoland. And if it says active, it means they bought in the last 12 months and you can't go in there. If it's been over 12 months, they'll say inactive. You can pull some order history, try to reopen that account. But if they're on the list, that means they haven't bought according to our records, so you can call on them. So that gives you, our reps still prefer the freedom to go anywhere in the country. It's all based on the ship to address. So if they bought in the last 12 months, you can't go. But if they didn't buy in the last 12 months, you can go in there. And there is some conflict because maybe you pull the city list from last week and it's a little outdated. So there is some occasionally complaint. Maybe a complaint I get every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, I get a complaint from one of the 125 people about, hey, Jimmy came in here and left samples, and I went there 2 weeks before, and now he's calling on them. But I tell them what the alternative is. Hey, you have a geographic area where you can go, and now if you have a cousin in Florida, or if you have a let's say a dealership chain, and some of their locations are in Michigan, but you're in Ohio, you can't pursue those locations. You have to give it to that rep. So reps overall in our industry prefer the you could say ship to location protection, 12-month protection over the geographical limitation protection. And depends on your industry. In the JanSan industry, I think this is the best model. If you're a wholesaler, where you only need 8 reps across the country, and you're only calling on certain specific big customers, maybe the geographic territory model is better.
And I watched a company video on YouTube from 2023 in which David Poole, who is a regional sales manager who has been with First Aid for, I think it's 18 years now, he really emphasized how the company's selling environment is one where once you get in a couple of years and establish yourself, you just never want to leave. And it's been something that's been very effective with First Aid having low turnover. Is there anything more you can say just about that selling environment there and why it's worked so well?
Yeah, in terms of low turnover, it's very difficult to get started. In this industry, the customers are quite sticky, because it's low priority products. Paper towels, trash bags, degreasers, fasteners, drill bits. These things are low priority. They're more worried about their operations and staffing levels. And OSHA's coming next week to do an audit. And I got a big customer. Kroger's coming. We're a food plant. We need to make soup cans for them. Low priority is the maintenance and cleaning supplies. So therefore, when you are a supplier, you're going to be getting likely, if you don't screw anything up, you're going to get a lot of orders for a long time. If you just don't screw anything up, don't change the price too much, change it minimally, like once a year at most, and you just deliver within 1 or 2 days, you answer your phone within 10 minutes, you take care of problems right away. We'll have these customers for a very long time, over 90% reorder for over 9 years in our experience. But to get the customers, now it's just getting their attention to look at your quote, to look at to try your samples, to give you a 5-minute meeting. It's very difficult. In terms of David Poole and that interview he had, one of our top salespeople, he was like, well, this is great now that I'm here. He's been doing this 25 years. It is great because he's just waking up and he's taking reorders on his phone and email with people he's been talking to for years and years. So I do advocate people if they're fairly young, this industry can use a lot more young people, particularly because customers really appreciate your texting, your quick emailing, sharing pictures, sharing a how-to video on YouTube, which the older generation's not as, I guess, up to speed with. And that's the trend. And a lot of people like to be serviced with these digital communication tools. So, but I advocate just if you put in the work, for 2 to 3 years, really hard work, if you're building a book of business in this, or if you're in an industry where you're calling these sort of customers, you just got to put in the work to get the customers and to understand them. And picking a niche, there's riches and niches, they always say. So trying to be all things to all people, of course. There's the universal supplies like bathroom supplies. Everybody's got a bathroom. But, picking a niche, whether it's, okay, I'm doing automotive, particularly automotive repair, or I'm doing, let's say municipalities, particularly fire departments, because there's a lot of particular details to know about those industries. Like, for instance, fire departments, they only work 3 days a week and it's 24 hours and they all know each other. So you can work within that network. going to their barbecue outings and going through referrals to their barbecue outings and referencing all the people the different the different fire departments. And, you look at Uline, you look at Fastenal, they're broad line suppliers, but really they're Uline's the place for boxes. You go there for boxes, then you need 10 other things. So you might as well buy some tape, and you might as well buy some floor mats and some gloves and some lighting. Fastenal's for fasteners, but well, you might as well need some gloves. You need some safety glasses. You need some drill bits. But originally you went there for fasteners. It's just like maybe Walgreens. You go there for pharmaceutical drugs. You go there for pills. But while I'm here, I might as well pick up all these candies and chocolates. So picking your niche and you're with your product line, fitting your certain customer, and then adding on to that is the typical business model that this has been successful for others.
That's pretty cool. Well, you mentioned that the company offers its staff unlimited vacation days, and I've heard of businesses doing that, but not really in the distribution space. So is there any insight you can share on how that benefit has worked out for First Aid and how your staff embraces that perk?
With the unlimited vacation days, our office and warehouse, we do need people here. A certain minimal number of people here. And again, in terms of me being president, in a sense, I am a sales rep, sales manager. But in terms of president, I'm just trying to help in the front end of the business, mostly with the product line and sourcing. And there's Joe with GM who manages the back end of the business. He's doing a great job. He's been here 30 years, longer than me. I was 2 years old. So he helps manage production staff and warehouse and the office. And he is, we're kind of separate. I'm on vacation for the sales force. And he's like, well, we have vacation. And it's either 1 week to 4 weeks a year. And, you just call off in advance, but it's a family-friendly environment. Mid-sized businesses, I think it's a really sweet spot to be for an employee. Because okay, we know most of the people here, but I'm still meeting new people. And, there's no real pressure. It's 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And it's minimal stress. It's not like we need this immediately every day, same day or next day delivery for most supplies. So in terms of my own vacation, the salespeople, it's unlimited, assuming they make their numbers. So if you're growing at 10% plus a year in sales, we don't care if you take off half the year. Just grow at 10% plus in sales, and nobody will ask questions. If you're down sales, if you're negative 10%, but negative 5%, we're going to ask questions, if you're consistently underperforming. So I think with any role that could be the case, but where there's positions like, let's say McDonald's, you need to take orders, you need a physical person there to do the work at certain times. With sales reps, they can take orders remotely. They can manage their business remotely. And I will, of course, seen that big trend. And that's been a huge time saver for, salespeople and customers, doing things remotely and digitally than before. But it also, you do lose some of the insights you get being on site with a customer. And the customers maybe, the warehouse staff, they need to be on site, of course, but the customer service team, they have a question and they're next to somebody, they can ask the question, but if they're not next to somebody, maybe they want to ask it. So it does slow the learning curve for people. It does, I guess, increase the learning curve, make them longer to learn industry knowledge.
All right. Well, the company states on its website that its 3 daily goals are cheaper, better, faster. Can you elaborate on the meaning behind each of those?
Yeah, good question. So cheap, better, faster. In terms of what our goals are, what's the purpose of even showing up for work every day? It's important for people to have a purpose, and our purpose is to keep the world working, you could say, which is kind of like Grainger. It's to keep people working with our supplies, maintenance, safety, cleaning supplies. But specifically, customers don't buy from you just to help them stay working. They want a better price maybe, or a better product, or maybe better service. These are the 3 common buckets of traits that we're looking for when we're meeting a prospect. Okay, so I met you, John, and why am I here? Well, here's some samples, here's a price list, and let's see if we can lower your spend, because some managers are incentivized to lower spend. That's important. Lower spend means more profit for the shareholders. That means more money they can spend on staff or their own innovations for their product line that they're selling to another customer for whatever they're doing. So trying to lower spend is important. People underestimate that. Just simply, apples to apples item, paper towels for paper towels, 20% less money. And also better products, because actually the biggest cost of I guess you could say running a business is, of course, labor. If you're cleaning, let's say, an airplane, the biggest cost of that is not the gloves the staff wear. It's not the vest they wear. It's not the vacuum they're using. 90% of the cost is the labor. So if they get a better vacuum, they have a better gloves, or they have better, cleaning tools, do their job, that's lower cost for them to do it. And then faster, of course, is service. It's the delivery time. So those are the three things we're looking for when we're meeting somebody is like, okay, can we, here's pricing, can we lower your spend? And they're like, oh no, your pricing's about the same. Well, how about the service? They're asking that, what's lead time currently to your provider? How often they pick up the phone when there's a problem or a question? And then how's the quality stuff? Is there anything you're happy with? The glass cleaner working well? Is the penetrant working well? Is the lubricant doing the job for you? So you're probing for ways to provide a benefit. And those are three areas to look for. But if you can't, generally you can find some way to help. But sometimes you can't, and that's okay. Hopefully they have a good provider. But if they don't have a good provider, those are three things we're looking for probing during a meeting. So that's a summary on what those three things mean.
Sure.
It guides us, every day when we're at a trade show or when we're shopping our product line, with manufacturers. We're looking for also lower cost on our product so we can pass it along the savings, better quality. So whether it's, I had a lubricant recently and the nozzle wasn't attached. It was in the box, 6 in a pack in the box. And sometimes the warehouse would pick the order of the can without including the nozzle. Customers get frustrated. The nozzle's not included in there. And me as a sales rep, I get first knowledge because my customers complaining, hey, the nozzle's not included when I get those 2 cans. If I get a box, I'll get it. But if I don't get it, if I get less than a box, I break a case. So that was a quick change we made with a new supplier we had to switch to have a manufacturing process where the nozzle was taped to the can for the lubricant. So it's always with the lubricant. Just little irritations like that to constantly needle and find and improve.
Yeah. Well, you already touched on this earlier in the conversation, but I've interviewed a good handful of distribution executives who, like you, work their way up through the warehouse to managing a branch, maybe a territory, and then up to the executive level. And they've each said that prior experience of having to work their way up through virtually every role in the company was priceless, as it gave them the perspective on how every department operates and the pain points involved for everyone doing that frontline work. And I know that's more common in family-owned businesses and those that are small to mid-sized, but I assume you would say the same is true for you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, with any business, it's like a language. French, German, English. If you want to learn a language, you've got to immerse yourself in a language. You got to be talking to various people and with various, words they're teaching you. So, with warehouse, there's different words to know, like bill of lading and pick ticket. And production, there's different things to learn, like I'll take a batch code and blending and mixing and ingredients. And, you can put the pieces together where I'm like, okay, this is separating this pumice hand cleaner. Why is it separating? Oh, well, probably because that one ingredient in the production, let's call it Danny and figure out what the hell is going on with, QA and production. But if you didn't work in production or you didn't think we even had production going on very strongly, then you would not connect the dots and you would just bring it to the purchasing department. It would slow things down with making a change. So of course, I think obviously immersing yourself as best you can, but it's really simple. Just, the products you're distributing, use them yourself as much as you can. Starting with the top sellers. And then number 2, talk to people using them or buying them. With customers, there's more than one. Let's say a auto shop, there's the person using it, the person paying for it, they want a better price. Person using it wants a better product. Person that's placing the PO for it wants better service, because they don't want to mess around with having to talk to you again. So you learn that as you're in different roles in the business. But obviously, it's no-brainer advice. Immerse yourself. And another rule I have is, 9 to 5 is the work hours. But people that will often rise in a business I see is they'll spend an extra hour or 2 after work learning their industry. And for me, it's a matter of researching my competitors, listening to podcasts like yours. It's just going on their website, watching their videos, reading their about us. It's reading about our suppliers, where are they from? How many employees they have? What's their top sellers that we're not buying right now? It's just, spending an hour a day, just further educating yourself. And that's all really is the key resource in any business's knowledge. It's the only difference. That's what makes the difference between the cost and the profit is their knowledge versus your knowledge as a consumer. If you knew everything they did, you wouldn't need them to provide it to you. You would make it yourself.
That's some great perspective. Well, small and mid-sized family-owned distributors, they're not particularly known for their technology and being just forward-thinking with technology. What can you share about First Aid's approach to technology and any recent investments or initiatives on that front?
Yeah, it's a good insight because we were so backwards. 2014, I graduated college and we didn't have a website. We're doing 48 million, almost 50 million a year in sales now. And we didn't have a website at 40 million then in sales. And super reps were constantly frustrated. My dad's never been on a computer. he has an assistant that Google searches for him how to get to the White Sox game downtown and prints out the Google search, search results for how to MapQuest there. And it was very frustrating for everybody. And we had people leave or not start with us, and when we try to recruit them because of that. Or we had a framework of a website with just pictures of products, but you couldn't click it and you couldn't read more information. So that was one of my strong. I put a lot of effort into that. And just 4 years ago, 2020, it was a lot more work than we thought for thousands of SKUs to get on a website. But there's out-of-the-box solutions, software providers, where you would just upload your images, upload your description. It's a lot of work at first. Once it's up there, it's not that much work to keep updated. So we finally got the website where there's SDS sheets, there's descriptions. We put in how-to videos. And the how-to videos I make them myself. They're easy to do. It's called CapCut. It's how to edit videos. It's owned by TikTok, and it's free to use. And it's a very robust video editing software tool. And my advice is to make a product demo video under 30 seconds, speed it up 3 times, and add some exciting music. And just anytime you use one of your products as a business sales rep or owner, just take a little video and then just speed it up, add some music, and upload to your YouTube channel, and then just add that to the website. So yeah, it's just like demo videos, it's the website, and also like communication within your company. How do you do that? Does everybody have to call everybody direct, or is there like a group chat? With WhatsApp or GroupMe, just get a group chat for each department, warehouse, customer service, Salesforce, and then just, there's maybe me looking at all of them to see what people are complaining about. The coffee cooler, are we complaining about? Or are we complaining about not having, pink gloves because it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month and all the women want pink gloves now. So that's a new item we need to stock apparently. So that, as a executive, you're trying to the nerve center, you need to be constantly tapped into what the information is and what you should be changing and adapting to. So that's how I do is with the group chat apps. I'm constantly on there to see what people are talking about because they won't tell you all the time. They're afraid to bother the executive about not having pink gloves or not having, an abrasive disc that's 3-inch when you typically sell 2-inch, but you really want 3-inch. You don't want to bother Tommy, about this. So intercommunication tools. I'm trying to think what else. Tech tools we've used, demo videos, the website. Online training, it costs very little money. You just record any sort of training event you have, upload it there, multiple choice question, it automatically quizzes it. It's called LMS, Learning Management System. And I learned all this just by, seeing all the inefficiencies and trying to find better ways to do things. But yeah, it's very inexpensive for even a company with 10 employees or 50 employees to have these tools. There's out-of-the-box solutions that cost very little money or are free. Social media, if you're not using social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube are the 3 we use. It costs you zero money to do a weekly post on a product promotion, and it's getting you maybe hundreds or thousands of impressions, which is somebody looking at it, looking at your degreaser, looking at your hand soap, looking at your wipes.
I'm always surprised that even we're 2024 in this industry, and there are still a lot of very large distributors that I just don't see have much of a social media presence at all. And like you said, it's literally free marketing that can be very effective.
Yes.
And there's companies like First Aid that are much smaller that are, doing all sorts of things on social media and getting their brand out there. So it's just one of those things where the bigger you are doesn't necessarily mean the more sophisticated you are. There's such a spectrum in this industry.
Yeah, with size, there's something called this economy of scale. Meaning, like, if you've ever been at a very big airport or like maybe Las Vegas, one of those convention centers, you're like, oh my God, it takes me 20 minutes to get across this floor to that other booth because it's so dang big. As a company, there's communication costs of trying to coordinate around a project because there's just so many people and so many departments and sign-offs. So I don't advocate any company to want to get bigger, even though we love to sell billions of dollars in sales. You want to get better, and as a byproduct of being better provider, people are going to call you more with orders. So just trying to get better. Don't want to have few people as possible with as much sales, because the more people, the more products, just the more to manage and slows you down, of course. But yeah, just economy of scale is a term to think in mind when you're frustrated trying to get something done in your big company.
Well, that is all the questions I had for you, Tommy. But before we sign off, is there anything else that you think our audience, which is primarily distribution executives, anything else that they might be interested to know about First Aid, or just any other parting words about what it's like running a 50-year-old family-owned distributor here in 2024?
50 years, 50 million. That's the goal. We're almost there. We're 48.5 million. It's been a long road, but things are getting easier now that we have the people and we have the products and we have the brand recognition. And we're just grateful, that America is a prosperous country and it's relatively safe, knock on wood. So you got to be, very, very lucky that I'm in this country, that I have a mentor like my dad. And there's a lot of potential pitfalls trying to get started in life. So just, where you are, where you're born, your mentor, and just the luck plays a large role that people underestimate.
Well, Tommy, that's everything I have for you. So thank you very much for joining the MDM podcast.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to the MDM podcast. Like what you just heard? You can find all of our past episodes at mdm.com/podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as a reminder, you can save 10% off of your Shift conference registration by using the code MDM podcast.